of experiences, we'll look at what technology experiences are being supported by the APIs that are being delivered. And what we noticed this year is that there's an increase in events and messaging. So events have shot up from 23% to 28% and messaging up from 28 to 33% respectively. And the increase in support for these experiences could indeed point to the rise in popularity of event-driven architecture. And it's an architectural pattern, of course, that emphasizes the production, detection, and consumption and reaction to events. And it's very well suited and useful for systems where asynchronous communication fits very well and has all of the benefits of decoupling and so on and so forth for software components. We're also seeing kind of the increase in support in events kind of being indicative of a more general trend that we're seeing towards a mix of API architectures becoming common within most industries. So there's different flavors and styles of APIs out there, such as RESTful APIs, query APIs like GraphQL, and event-driven APIs. They all come with their own strengths and weaknesses, and they can be better suited for certain experiences that are being delivered. More companies are likely to want to adopt a mixture of API architectures to be able to deliver more experiences. What we're seeing coming out on top again this year is web and mobile following in second. They're slightly decreasing over time, and this indeed could be due to the increase in popularity of other experiences. But overall, the results suggest that APIs are being used in increasingly diverse ways to support a variety of experiences and use cases. And as we're moving away from one-to-one integration approaches towards reusable, composable and componentized architectures, we're becoming more aware that APIs can serve more than just a singular experience, which I think promotes reuse and offers a higher return on investment opportunity as well. Now, getting a little bit deeper into the weeds, we have to go into some of the details at some stage, and I'm very interested in these types of details. But when we're looking at kind of how these experiences are being delivered, what we're seeing is that we're learning more about how organizations are using the different API styles, the protocols, and the technologies, as well as the supporting specifications that are out there to deliver multiple experiences. And the modern day integration landscape really is a melting pot with regards to the API styles that are being used. So a mix of integration patterns is becoming more normal, as I already mentioned, because more often than not, these different flavors are complementary to each other. It's never really a comparison of one versus the other. And I think it's not really a surprise that we're seeing REST continue to dominate in kind of the styles or the protocols that are being used. SOAP is still holding strong in number 2. That's especially true within larger organizations, but we're continuing to see an increase in organizations indicating that they're using more than one protocol or technique. That's holding kind of similar to what we saw in our last survey. So around 80% indicating that they're using more than one flavor of API, and almost 60% using 3 or more. Again, back to what we mentioned about events and messaging experiences increasing. We're seeing a steady uptake in technology and protocol offerings like WebSockets. We're seeing Apache Kafka and Confluent Kafka also increase. MQTT and AMQP usage remains fairly comparable. What I found a little bit interesting going into the details here was that there was no real increase shown in GraphQL. So despite all of the hype that's kind of out there in the industry, perhaps we're seeing that GraphQL is entering what's known as the throat of disillusionment from an implementation perspective. So it's, of course, a very good style based on selecting it, kind of constraining it appropriately and using it for the right situations. But it's not a silver bullet, and I think everyone is becoming aware of that as well. I am personally a big advocate of API specifications and the affordances that they bring on the provider and consumer side of the API coin. So I'm always very interested to see how the survey group are using API specifications. And what's coming back, it's not a great surprise, but we're seeing OpenAPI continue to dominate, actually increasing in 4% popularity based on our last survey. And again, I think this aligns with what we're seeing based on the popularity of REST on the left-hand side as well, especially given the drivers and the experiences that are being supported on the previous slide. I expect this to grow even further, with the kind of popularity of recent AI advances and companies like OpenAI and their new plugin marketplace supporting OpenAPI as a specification natively. What we're also seeing is JSON schema has boosted in popularity this year. And async API has a slight increase as well. But overall here, the figures really point to the trend that the industry is becoming more comfortable working across different flavors of APIs, realizing the benefits of specifications for supporting those different technology choices as well. And the tooling used to build and consume APIs needs to be able to keep up and meet teams where they are and support multiple protocols and multiple specifications, really as being kind of a base expectation moving forward. Now, API quality should be front and center for everyone, as APIs are playing a more pivotal role across all industries. And for the next couple of slides, we'll take a closer look at what's happening around API quality within our survey. The first thing that we want to look at in this section is kind of getting a handle on how organizations themselves critique and measure API success. And it's interesting to see that performance has consistently been the top metric. So between the 70 and 75 percentile over the last number of years, usability and developer experience has been on a increasing trend as well, and it's coming in at 58% in this year's survey. I think it's also interesting to note that, you know, monetization is kind of holding strong around that 20% mark as well. I think monetization is a success metric that organizations that are slightly more mature in their API program or strategy will pay particular attention to. It's also interesting this year to see issues logged versus those resolved is increasing up to 35%. So as API adoption becomes more crucial, you know, more APIs are being exposed. We want to have more consumers of those APIs. Being able to react to any consumer issues quickly is becoming increasingly important. But overall, the metrics that we're seeing, you know, they provide very valuable insights into what organizations consider as important for measuring the success of their APIs, and then using that to kind of guide future investments in their strategies. I think it's worth noting, at least from my perspective, that what we metric with regards to success should itself evolve as our API programs mature. And now next, we're going to take a look at how folks are delivering quality to ensure that they can meet these success criteria. And one of the things that we're really seeing is that formal testing processes are becoming more common. So testing as a top priority for organizations is trending upwards. It's up to 56% this year. And again, that's not surprising given the complexity that we've seen in the landscape and the fact that organizations view API quality as an important business priority. You know, after all, APIs really are fueling all of the digital experiences that we're almost taking for granted. A notable trend is the decrease in percentage to the tune of 15% of respondents who say that they plan to implement a formal testing process into the future. For me, at least, this indicates that they've already kind of recognized this and they're well on their way to implementing it. But in general, no matter the size of the company, we're seeing strides and progress being made with regards to getting a formal testing process in place. Now, documentation is an important attribute of API quality, and we're seeing a substantial proportion of organizations reporting that they have a formal documentation in place, and for the 20% that are in the middle, they do plan on getting it in place into the near future. So the value of API documentation is being universally recognized across all organizations, trending slightly higher in organizations that have more than 10,000 employees, while smaller organizations have documentation in place but don't kind of put such a high priority on it. In general, from my perspective, you know, documentation is most beneficial when it's A, accessible, when it's B, consistent, when it's C, it stays up to date, and D, it's continuously validated as part of the delivery cycle. Now, we don't have exact findings as to, you know, the respondents, whether they agree or disagree with my sentiments there, but overall, the data highlights that the importance of documentation in the development and adoption of APIs is increasing, and organizations are becoming increasingly aware of that importance as they're maturing in their years being engaged with APIs. And for me, this really aligns with the importance of developer experience that we saw as a key success metric in one of the earlier slides. But in the absence of quality, you know, what happens? Well, what we're seeing is that rushed design, development, and testing can lead to poor API quality being delivered. And we're seeing that there's an acute awareness that poor API quality can have a big impact on organizational success. Now, I'm a firm believer that people are key to being successful with APIs. So I think it's very encouraging to see that there's an awareness that the impact on the people side of delivering APIs ranks as the #1 risk. So we're seeing as loss of time and resources, spending their time testing and troubleshooting issues is coming back as the biggest risk selected across the last number of years. It's coming in at 49% this year. And this really does indicate that poor API quality results in significant time and resource waste for organizations, and that ultimately will have an impact on the bottom line. Other notable risks include potential loss of customers or users, damaging of brand reputation within the marketplace. And what we're also seeing this year is an increase in legal or compliance issues, which I think goes hand in hand with the increase that we're seeing in regulatory and compliance drivers for creating APIs.